Have you ever found yourself scrolling through luxury home listings, imagining yourself in a 5-bedroom house with granite countertops and a chef's kitchen, even though you're still renting a studio apartment? Maybe you're lying awake at night, convincing yourself that if you just stretch your budget a little further, you can skip the starter home phase and jump straight into your forever home. Or perhaps you've been house hunting and keep rejecting perfectly good properties because they don't match the Pinterest board you've been building for the past 3 years. Well, today I'm going to reveal why chasing your dream home as your first purchase is one of the biggest wealth-destroying mistakes you can make in real estate. Some of these insights are going to challenge everything HGTV has programmed you to believe, while others will finally explain why you've been stuck renting while your friends who bought boring starter homes are already moving into their second properties. Either way, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your first home should be a strategic stepping stone, not an emotional finish line. My name is Drew, and I help people understand how real estate actually builds wealth instead of just looking impressive on Instagram. If you're serious about using property ownership as a wealth-building tool instead of a lifestyle statement, go ahead and subscribe. Drop a like if this perspective shifts how you think about buying your first home. Before we get into the numbers, let me ask you something. When you picture buying your first home, what scenario plays in your head? Do you see yourself making a smart financial move that positions you for future wealth? Or do you imagine finally living in the kind of house that proves you've made it to your family and friends? The reality is, most first-time buyers have completely backwards priorities when it comes to home ownership. We base our decisions on emotion, social pressure, and media-driven expectations rather than economic strategy. And here's what makes this topic so crucial. The home you choose as your first purchase doesn't just affect where you live for a few years. It determines whether you build wealth through real estate or get trapped in a financial cage that looks pretty from the outside. Think about it this way. If you were learning to invest in stocks, would you immediately dump your entire savings into high-risk options? If you were starting a business, would you lease the most expensive office space on day one? Real estate works the same way. Your first move should optimize for learning, flexibility, and wealth creation, not for impressing people at dinner parties. So let's start with a fundamental truth about mortgages that most first-time buyers completely ignore. The equity building timeline. When you take out a mortgage, you're not building wealth equally across all 30 years. The math is heavily weighted against you at the beginning. Consider a $300,000 mortgage at 6% interest over 30 years. Your monthly payment runs about $1,799. Seems manageable, right? But here's the breakdown nobody shows you. In year one, you'll pay approximately $21,588 in total payments. Of that amount, only about $3,600 goes toward paying down your actual loan balance. The remaining $17,988 goes straight to the bank as interest. You're paying the bank 5 times more than you're paying yourself. Now let me add context to those numbers. We're talking about individual home purchases here, not investment properties or rental portfolios. This is the mortgage structure for your primary residence. When we say you're only building $3,600 in equity while paying $21,588, that means you're converting less than 17% of your payments into actual wealth. The other 83% disappears forever. But here's where the dream home trap gets truly expensive. That $300,000 example assumes you bought a modest starter home. Most people chasing their dream home as their first purchase are looking at $400,000, $500,000, or even $600,000 properties. Let's run those numbers. A $500,000 mortgage at 6% creates a monthly payment of about $2,998. After 1 year of payments, $35,976 total, you've built approximately $6,000 in equity. You've paid the bank nearly $30,000 in interest to borrow money to live in a house you wanted too early. And remember, this is just year one. The standard recommendation is to stay in a home for at least 5 to 7 years to make buying worthwhile. That means you're committing to pay roughly $150,000 to $180,000 in interest over that period while building minimal equity in the early years. But monthly payments are just the beginning of the dream home cost structure. Let's talk about the opportunity cost of overbuying. When you stretch your budget to afford your dream home immediately, you're not just paying more in interest, you're destroying your ability to build wealth through other channels. That extra $1,000 or $1,500 per month you're spending on the bigger mortgage could have been invested in index funds, used for house hacking opportunities, or saved for a down payment on a rental property. Over 7 years, investing an extra $1,200 monthly at a modest 7% return would create approximately $126,000 in wealth. Instead, that money vanished into mortgage interest on a house that was too expensive for your current financial position. You traded $126,000 in potential investment wealth for granite countertops and an extra bedroom you use as storage. Here's another dimension most buyers ignore: flexibility and financial resilience. The recommended approach is to keep your housing costs, including mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance, below 30% of your gross income. When you buy your dream home as your first purchase, you're typically pushing that ratio to 35%, 40%, or even 45% of your income. What does this actually mean? It means you have no financial buffer. Job loss becomes catastrophic instead of manageable. Unexpected expenses force you into credit card debt. Investment opportunities pass you by because all your capital is locked in your house. You've built a beautiful prison. Some people justify this by saying, "But I'm building equity. Real estate always appreciates." This mindset reveals a dangerous misunderstanding of how home equity actually works. Yes, real estate typically appreciates over time, but appreciation doesn't care whether you bought a $300,000 starter home or a $500,000 dream home. If your local market appreciates 3% annually, the $300,000 home increases by $9,000 in year one, while the $500,000 home increases by $15,000. You got an extra $6,000 in appreciation, but you paid an extra $12,000 in interest to get it. You're losing money on that trade. Now let's talk about the alternative strategy that actually builds wealth: buying a strategic starter home first. A starter home isn't about settling. It's about optimizing for equity building and financial flexibility. Here's what this looks like in practice. Instead of stretching to a $500,000 house, you buy a $300,000 property in a solid neighborhood. Maybe it's smaller than you wanted. Maybe the kitchen isn't Instagram worthy. But your monthly payment is $1,799 instead of $2,998. That $1,199 monthly difference creates options. Option 1, you invest that difference. Over 7 years at 7% returns, you build $126,000 in investable wealth while simultaneously building equity in your home. Option 2, you make extra principal payments on your mortgage, accelerating your equity building and cutting years off your loan term. Option 3, you save for a down payment on a rental property, creating a second income stream while building equity in 2 properties instead of 1. The dream home buyer has none of these options. Every dollar goes to the mortgage, taxes, and maintenance on a property that's too expensive for their current situation. Let's examine one final comparison that makes this crystal clear. 2 buyers, both making $100,000 annually. Buyer A purchases a $500,000 dream home with 5% down, monthly payment $2,998. After 7 years, they've paid approximately $251,832 total, built about $70,000 in equity through payments, and gained roughly $115,000 from appreciation, assuming 3% annual growth. Total wealth from housing, $185,000. Buyer B purchases a $300,000 starter home with 5% down. Monthly payment, $1,799. They invest the $1,199 monthly difference. After 7 years, they've paid approximately $151,116 toward their mortgage, built about $42,000 in equity through payments, gained roughly $69,000 from appreciation, and accumulated $126,000 in investments. Total wealth, $237,000. Buyer B has $52,000 more wealth than buyer A despite buying a cheaper house. More importantly, buyer B has liquidity and options. They can sell the starter home and buy their dream home with a massive down payment, eliminating the need for mortgage insurance and reducing their monthly payment. Or they can convert the starter home into a rental property, creating passive income while buying a second property. Buyer A is stuck. They can't afford to move up because they have minimal equity and no savings. They're house rich and cash poor, which is just a fancy way of saying broke. The bottom line is this: your first home is a financial tool, not a trophy. Buying your dream home before you can truly afford it doesn't make you successful. It makes you a high-income renter, paying the bank instead of a landlord. But here's the empowering reality. Once you understand that your first home should be strategic rather than perfect, you can use real estate the way wealthy people do, as a wealth-building ladder. Buy the starter home, build equity and savings, then leverage that position to move up when the numbers actually work. These principles don't have to limit your future. They're the foundation that makes your dream home actually affordable instead of a financial nightmare. Buy the boring house first. Build wealth systematically. Then buy the dream house with cash flow and options instead of stress and stretched budgets. The choice is yours. You can chase the dream now and stay broke, or build the foundation now and actually afford the dream later.